There was a thick orange cloud and a presence from the direction of that thick orange cloud in this corner as I did the pentagram rite. In the mirror was something like an orange folding screen. In the shadows was twists of gray. Outside of the shadows was more like a turquoise. There were flat flashes of light. 1, 2, 3. And I felt upon my feet a prickling and like a tapping sensation. I felt prickling elsewhere. During the final reading, it was like there was this drifting feeling, but it was like a heavy push back and forth was with it. In the final scrying, I saw above me like some sort of purple, thick tube scrunched up or something like that. It did bend back and forth a little. And there was like some sort of triangular, like sort of shape. And my form in the mirror opened up into a triangle of blue, and I went to where that blue was on the ceiling, and I felt 2 sets of that storm of analgesia flow down me. Very content, no pain, opened up. The theme from the previous chapters and the consequences of aspects of the story, like the whole technical virgin thing, leading to the giving into the regular way, and the consequences thereof, involves part of chapter 13 to 18. And one of the things that we encounter is more use of Enochian. Like, for example, one thing translates into open spirit eye, but certainly with the intent that these languages are only used in a religious context, then, it has a whole different effect to it. And everything is connected to some sort of belief system. She kills a monster before giving in to her desires and his desires. And, they already were giving in, but not in the form that, they both wanted to try at. And then, of course, there's blame of him, right? And it's like they both made the same choice. And you have the same thing that happens with a lot of Christians you see. It's like, oh, well, I can just be forgiven. And I remember in youth group I did say something to that effect that, you can just sin and repent later, right? Well, I mean, it acts like that. I'm sure I said it more confidently and stuff. There are substances that people use to counteract encounters with vampires. Like, for example, vervain. If vervain, you know, makes it when you're, that you're not so anymore, then, I guess that makes sense. That became part of the vampire thing because the vampires in the movies are like, it's like, you need to cut back on the milk, man, or, you need to deal with some sort of allergen. Beware of using poems around people, you know, especially of certain sorts. You got to be aware of what effects they have on people and be aware of both yours and others directing towards certain results. And mutual interests in a relationship are important. Complementary aspects are as well. Myth is important to connect to, and by what I mentioned earlier, I wasn't actually the sort that was just trying to use things to excuse myself. I was aware of culpability. The Bible's not the only set of stories and stuff that has the idea of priesthood basically justifying the nobility or allowing honor killing to further their thing, or honor suicides or whatever. And we're not promoting those couple things on this channel here, but yeah, I'm just saying it occurs in this story. And so certain situations that an individual could be forced into, some of it, oh, well, to atone, you have to go to this. And it's like, yeah, perhaps atone for a mistake, but the system using that against people as more than just a corrective and a preventative measure is not really the right approach, is it? Now, just because some mistakes are made doesn't mean that you can't continue the journey together and try to rectify or accomplish just as you were, and perhaps, continue towards more permanent and correctly contextual sort of chapter 15 addresses, the whole secret name theme sort of thing going on. How perhaps the skyborn and the subterranean and the surface dwellers might have different inflections of mythology. How a person can become sort of a master in both realms, the unconscious are the different spiritual realms, and this human world with the the mental and the physical side. The male heroes kind of has some of those things that people would talk about Jesus or whatever other hero that, like, well, they had a normal birth more or less, but then again it wasn't a normal birth, and they're kind of chapter 16 reminds us that some things can't be settled in one confrontation, although people can stay faithful to their cause even when forced to take part in a system or conditions beyond their control. Chapter 17 reminds us of how even in the enemy there can be something that holds a likeness to the source of the guidance for one's own system, or perhaps some sort of parallel. In chapter 18, we realize that some problems don't come from nowhere. You know, you have people working, 2, 3 different sides against each other. And sometimes they guise things in religion. And again, we have this idea of what may be considered blasphemy, but really it's a different take on the same thing, and people authentically believe the dual ethic sides of things.